If you can vividly remember the 90s, you likely have some of these clapping sequences lodged so deep into your brain that they've become sort of an innate sense of your childhood. Just like riding a bike, if I started saying, Miss Mary Mac, 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 the next thing you're going to say is, all dressed in black. How about this one? This is by far not the only time Sesame Street showed this type of hand game, and it's a type of play that spans centuries, cultures, and genders, with some surprising relevance to our story and characters. When I first started to research this video, I knew it was going to be an expansive topic, so first off, what's this called exactly? Sure, Patty Cake, Peas Porridge Hot, Down by the Banks, and Miss Lucy are all examples, but collectively, they're called clapping games or hand games. No, really, you don't say. While it's not exactly easy to pin down a direct origin of clapping games, we find them as part of the oral tradition going back all the way before 1000 BCE in West and Central Africa. Clapping games are tied deeply to oral storytelling and call and response and musical traditions, as well as initiation rituals. In his 2009 book, Africa and the Blues, Austrian music ethnologist Gerard Kubik notes that rhythmic traditions were part of the daily ritual of life, especially among the Yoruba, Bantu, and Ashanti people. So to discover the origin of hand games, let's look a bit into who these ethnic groups were, where they are now, and what they contributed to this culture. First, the Yoruba. This is one of the largest ethnic groups in Africa even to this day. While most of the population of people with descent from the Yoruba tribes lives primarily in Nigeria, there are also large populations in Benin, Ghana, Togo, and the United States, with over 200,000 people of Yoruba descent recognized as of 2023. So not only does Yoruba influence and culture cover a lot of West Africa and Central Africa, the diaspora of the Yoruba people reaches as far as Canada, Cuba, Britain, and Ireland. The Yoruba are said to be a religious people, but also pragmatic and tolerant of many religious and spiritual differences. The Book of Enlightenment, a key component of Yoruba philosophy, teaches psychology, sociology, mathematics, cosmology, and other areas of human interest. Yoruba culture would have spread through Europe up through North African Moors once Islam was introduced to the area around the 14th century. Bantu refers to over 400 distinct ethnic groups, including Zulu, Xhosa, Shona, Luba, and Swahili. Initially, the Bantu were located in Central Africa and later spread through the continent, covering much of the southern parts. The group of Bantu-related languages is diverse, with approximately 350 million speakers across more than 500 individual languages. This comes from the expansion lasting thousands of years, literally from 5000 BCE all the way up to the year 500 in the Common Era. Have I said lately how much I absolutely cannot stand relaying numbers to people? The Ashanti are but a part of the larger Akan ethnic group and tend to trace their lineage back through the maternal line. All this is important because of the evolution of these games over the years. It's mostly been practiced and handed down and maintained by women and girls. Today, the Ashanti diaspora can be found primarily in Jamaica and throughout the Caribbean due to the transatlantic slave trade. Today, they can be found primarily in Ghana and have been a powerful force in Africa for thousands of years, as part of the much larger Akan people up and down the Ivory Coast. Clapping games were meant to mirror drum patterns during ritual storytelling. Children mimicked adult rhythms, which were often encoded with history, proverbs, and moral lessons. Many of these claps and dances were improvisational, and is even a part of the origin of the style of martial arts known as capoeira.
Wait a minute. Capoeira? Isn't that what Ella uses? Did you ask her about it?
My cousin Ella? Yeah, that's who told me. Similarly to clapping games, capoeira was developed by enslaved Africans in Brazil when they were forcibly brought to the country by Portuguese slavers. And while these were typically cultural practices that were often improvisational, Hopping over to East Asian traditions, we find that hand clapping to be an important part of Buddhist and Confucian chants. For instance, have you seen any of my Assassin's Creed streams? In this game, Naoe, the other main protagonist who definitely did not exist and is not a historical figure, still emulates traditional practices of the times in which she would have existed. The kujikiri, or hand signs, are one thing, but there's also this action she does whenever you come up to a shrine. This clap isn't some sort of applause for a kami. It's believed to be for dispelling negative energy and inviting the deity out of the shrine to bestow a blessing. Confucian and Buddhist monks would also use clapping along with oral chants and schooling as a form of mnemonic device. This is the sort of memory aid that can include things like patterns, acronyms, rhymes, or, yes, clapping, in order to help people increase information retention. So our brains work better when we can associate a memory with as many of our senses as possible. So if you can associate memory with sight and sound, even a smell or a feeling, those memories are far more vivid than when only one of our senses is involved. This is likely why incense can be so important for spiritual study. I think I'll save that for something else. During the Middle Ages, in Europe, even in the UK, clapping games evolved from oral storytelling traditions. Now, this is also when we started seeing the shift in these games and traditions largely being upheld by women and girls, as this was considered domesticated play. That has to be why Idle is the most excited here. She's all smiles while Madeline looks focused, and Pat, well, to me they really seem placid, like their mind has to be somewhere else. Maybe it's on Blair, and however that situation's gonna turn out. Of course, there's also the general faux pas of Pat having to partake in a game that, frankly, is a little young for them and not exactly aligned with their gender identity. That being said, I wonder what they were discussing in this moment. Maybe something that Ima learned recently, or perhaps she's taking her turn at a particular verse or rhythm. Oh no, I just figured this out. This very well might have been them discussing those candles they tried burning for Shane, Pam, and Martin. Either way, it makes sense that they'd know at least some kind of clapping games. It's definitely not London Bridge or Oranges and Lemons. Those sorts of games wouldn't come until much later. As noted by Karen Marsh in her book, The Musical Playground, these games came up around the Victorian period when expressive play was encouraged for girls but not for boys. Instead, the type of clapping games these three would have played likely stemmed from older pagan practices, especially in Ireland, where oral tradition was passed down through women, as we discovered in Tassandra's old journals. So what we have here in this picture is necessarily a group of people using a method of mnemonics that likely reached their region from African influence from the south. Traditions from Africa would have moved north into Ireland from the Iberian Peninsula and from Ireland into Britain and eventually Scotland. Clapping games would be something that Tassandra and Edna were already familiar with, even if specific games wouldn't pop up until later. Pat a Cake in 1698, Peas Porridge Hot in the 1700s, and Miss Mary Mack during the American Civil War, according to Linda Rosario of the Denver Center for the Performing Arts. The Americas weren't without their own form of clapping games. Many indigenous tribes use hand gestures, claps, and beats in ceremonial storytelling. In the Cambridge History of American Music, David Nichols suggests the use of clapsticks in Native American storytelling mirrors early ritual origins of clapping. I might even compare this to the Oceanic culture's use of the haka. Now, the haka isn't exactly a clapping game in the way we think of it for children. The Polynesian haka is a powerful cultural practice deeply embedded in oral tradition, performance, and a communal memory of Maori and other Polynesian peoples. It shares several key cultural functions with African and Afro-diasporic clapping games. It's something that is studied at length by many Polynesian scholars. Ma'ai's The Politics of Language Vitalization, Peretu's The Dance of the Noble People, and Mahuika's Rethinking Oral History and Tradition all lay out the deeply held cultural identity held to these traditions. And if you've never seen one in person, let me just tell you that it really is a powerful and energizing experience. Even if you're just watching it go on around you, you can feel the excitement, energy in the air. It's almost enough to make a girl combust! But then I simmer back down when I think of the cultural shift in American and African hand games in and around the 1600s and even up to modern day. The 1600s marked the beginning of the transatlantic slave trade, and whether they were involved as victims or brokers, West and Central African tribes were heavily disrupted and displaced during this time. Captives were taken from their homes with nothing, given nothing, and had their culture and languages beaten out of them by their captors, the owners, the crackers. One of the most heavily raided countries during this time is what we now call Nigeria, but even this was largely divided into the Oyo, Ife, Ijebu, and Igba territories. These groups brought with them only the oral traditions of their ancestors, but even then, they had to be extremely careful dictating anything in their own language, and spiritual practices were restricted to Christianity only, with lessons taught out of the slave Bible. Estimates suggest that at least 20% of enslaved Africans brought to Cuba, Brazil, and the Caribbean in the 1800s were Yoruba descent. Another significant portion came from the Bantu linguistic family: Congo, Basin, Angola, Mozambique, where Yaste was supposedly from, Zimbabwe, Tanzania, and more. The Ashanti, on the other hand, weren't often enslaved, but were among the most powerful slavers from the Gold Coast, or what is now called Ghana, according to the 1993 book Forest of Gold by Ivor Wilkes. This was born out of a conflict with neighboring groups, Fante and Denkiara, providing them a steady stream of war captives to trade with the British and the Dutch merchants. Greed is potentially the most powerful corrupting force of the planet. The next being religion, because greed begets ideology, and all priests are just snake oil salesmen. So it becomes easy to see how clapping games have made it all the way through to the modern day, mostly as a girl's traditional way of using the domesticism forced on them by Christianity in order to maintain the spiritual and ritual practices that once empowered their ancestors, which is potentially the real message behind this unassumingly cute and reflective moment between three of Alden's citizens. Rather than allow themselves to be indoctrinated by some book, Pat, Maddie, and Amy are keeping up the stories of their elders. Women like Cassandra, Edna, and Olivia, who are thinkers and guide. Wisdom shared through generations and passed down from the matrilineal line from mother to child. Simple hand games are a component of empowerment, freedom, and history. Patreon is our main hub for all things involved with Tales of Atonement, and our patron support helps us produce our episodes faster and with more consistency. But what's in it for you? From there you can find our Tales of Atonement Discord server, art, music, comics, as well as exclusive viewership for upcoming scripts. Supporting us on Patreon is what shows us we're part of a growing community of artists, actors, history buffs, and storytellers that have become fascinated with our characters these past couple of years. This is our passion project we've put our hearts and souls into over 20 years, and your support really helps keep that flame alive. Right now, a big thanks to Pammy Poo, Heinrich28, Shadow Fox, Charles Tam, Arya Gamari, Jace Morland, and Lunder Lumen. And of course, everyone who joins us each week. At the very least, I hope you'll like this video, subscribe, and ring my bell if it really resonated with you. And I'll see you again next week. Many a Mickle, Maximuckle.